Hello and welcome to the May Queens podcast. I'm Mary Graves.
And I'm Heather.
How is your week going so far?
It's going all right. I can't complain. It's going to be a busy one. How about you?
Not too shabby. Got my projects in the works, and I saw the new Godzilla versus Kong trailer came out like yesterday. Did you watch that?
I haven't seen the preview yet. Oh, or the trailer. What?
Yeah, it's officially out. So I know you got the old VHS tape. So now is the time to do that comparison thing. I can't remember when the date is that it's supposed to come out. I want to say it's March, but I feel like that's too soon. It might be September. But that is one of the movies that is going to be out on HBO Max for like 30 days and in theaters. So if you have an HBO Max subscription, or if you don't have one, go get one because now's the time to watch.
Yeah, I can't wait for that one.
Same that and Conjuring 3. I'm so glad that that's going to be on HBO Max. Looking at all of our 2021 movies, I was watching the Wonder Woman movie over the weekend because this was the last weekend to watch it, and I wanted to make sure that I've got a subscription. I want to make sure I take advantage. And they had a preview for all the movies that Warner Brothers is dropping. They have like 17 movies that they're dropping on HBO Max and in theaters. And I realized that a lot of the ones I'm excited about for this year are going to get to keep their dates because they're doing that. Like the new Mortal Kombat movie is on there and they don't even have like a preview yet. So I'm excited about that.
That's too cool.
But for today is another Films in Flames episode, as we like to call it, because in midsummer they burn people alive. So we're talking about the films and we're burning them up. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like for today, the pick that we take turns picking out the movies, and my pick for today is Orphan, which, yes, I do have on DVD. I don't know if the light's going to blur it there. Less light blur. This might be a controversial pick to some because apparently it's hated. Like, it does not have that great of a Rotten Tomatoes rating. When I hear people talk about it, it's usually in a, oh God, that movie sort of way. But I loved this movie when it came out. And a lot of people agree that even if you don't like this movie, they really like the woman, girl back then, Isabelle Fuhrman, I believe is her name. I have names written down. Yes, Isabelle Fuhrman, who played Esther. And there's something wrong with Esther. And she actually was, I want to say 11 when this movie came out. So the fact that she's playing basically an adult playing a child, she does it so well, and she's so dynamic, and she's so evil in this movie. I think that this movie is worth checking out just for that purpose alone, because the acting is so great. What was your thoughts on this movie, just overall?
I like it, but I really love Peter Skarsgård and Vera Farmiga, so they already had my interest at the beginning. But I really liked it.
Yeah, and it's a pre-Conjuring Farrah Farmiga too, if I believe. So her making her way into horror with this, I consider it a modern day classic. Actually, it's Dark Castle too, Entertainment, which you haven't seen Dark Castle come out with a lot of films. They were really big in the early 2000s, and I think they just somehow fell off the map, although they do have a couple of future projects that I'll talk about later. But I feel like the gap that Dark Castle left after they stopped making mostly remakes of other classics like House on Haunted Hill and House of Wax, that gap was filled by Blumhouse and A24, which have like perfected modern day horror. I would like to see Dark Castle come back. I think there's still room for the kind of horror that they create because it's just so flamboyant. It's flashy horror. So I would like to see them do more stuff, and hopefully we'll be seeing in the future them starting to produce more. I think they pair with Warner Brothers too, so that could be a really good thing for them.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the beginning of this movie. The beginning has a great shock value. I think this movie came out in 2009, if I'm correct, from the DVD cover. So I feel like around that time you had Orphan, you had Disturbia with Shia LaBeouf, you had The Descent was sometime around that time too, maybe a couple years difference. And they all had this great way of starting out the movie with a really huge shock. With The Descent, it was the car accident. Well, actually, for both The Descent and Disturbia, it was car accidents. But with The Descent, it's the wife losing both her kid and her husband. And with Disturbia, it was Shia LaBeouf. I think he was in the car accident with his dad, but his dad didn't make it and he did. So with Orphan, you got the pregnancy, the stillbirth of baby Jessica, nightmare that Vera Farmiga's character Kate is having. And I remember seeing this as soon as they roll her in that wheelchair and you see the blood, you're like, what the fuck is going on? Now, I've never had kids, so I'm just looking at this from, wow, this is really gory. And, you know, if I were a mom, maybe I would have nightmares like this. Or if I ever had a stillbirth or a miscarriage, maybe this is something I would go through. But it wasn't, you know, it was more, I got into it for the horror and the shock value of it. But you're somebody who's got kids. What do you think when you see this scene?
Oh, I just think it's hard to watch. You know, watching her hemorrhage and everything, it's just like, I don't know. It's a lot to watch. And then I'm trying to remember what she did in her head, what she imagined about it, because I know it was different than what actually happened.
Well, I remember her saying something about how she carried baby Jessica for 16 weeks. And I think this comes out later in the movie when Esther finds the journal and she's reading the journal back to her. I can't remember if that's when it's discovered or at some other point when Kate is actually talking about it. But she carried baby Jessica for 16 weeks knowing that she was stillborn. But when they finally were able to have her give birth to her not alive baby, that her legs were twitching, and the doctors told her it was something about electrical pulses, that it wasn't real movement, that her baby was in fact dead. But in the nightmare sequence, I almost said dream, but it's definitely not a dream, it's definitely a nightmare. The nightmare sequence, she doesn't know that her baby is stillborn. They tell her, like, the nurses come up to her and say, I'm sorry, your baby is dead. This is before they even take the baby out of her, and they hand her her dead baby all covered in blood and gross, and it's just so visually disturbing. But I think that's what got me into the movie. Like, I knew this was a horror. This wasn't just some horror movie that would let you down. They were really going to bring the special effects and the grossness to this. The story itself is just, to me, it's amazing. I enjoy the twist at the end, but I'm messed up in the head. I don't know.
It's a good ending.
Okay, so then we move on to, okay, so we are back at Kate and John's home, and their grandmother is there, and I hate this grandmother character. I think her name is Barbara or something, and she's just she's the typical mother-in-law that you love to hate, and she's John's actual mother, so of course she's a bitch to her daughter-in-law. Granted, there's some established stuff there that kind of, you know, it's reasonable that the grandmother's going to be questioning things that the daughter-in-law does. But the daughter-in-law, has made headway in giving up alcohol. She's been alcohol-free for about a year. There was an incident. You don't know the entire thing yet, but it deals with their mostly deaf daughter, Max, and falling into the pond that they have outside of their house and almost drowning. And the grandmother brings up, you know, she asks her, does your daughter remember anything that happened? And she's just so casual about, like, you know, you didn't go through AA, but, you know, you had to have your insight moment to give up the alcohol. You wouldn't listen to us. And it's like, do you want her to continue drinking again? I mean, like, don't push people's buttons. It's just ridiculous. What do you think about that whole scene?
Yeah, I think that was a very condescending thing to do. And I thought, wow, way to be supportive, you know, like, you don't have to give tough love. You can, like, you know, you can support someone without enabling them. But when you're, like, talking like that, you're kind of like beating them down, you know?
Yeah.
Get them on earth.
And Speaking of the deaf daughter, too, that is another reason why I love this movie. One, they use an actual deaf child in this movie, and her facial expressions and her ability to cry on cue, or however they got her to cry, she's just so amazing. I don't think like a lot of attention is given to Isabel for her portrayal of Esther, which rightfully so, because creepy as hell. But the girl who plays Max, who wasn't really in anything else, I think she was in a couple Resident Evil movies playing a younger character of somebody else. But other than that, you don't really hear from this character, this actress anymore. But she was incredible in this movie. You really felt for the pain she was going through, being manipulated by somebody she thought was her partial sister, her stepsister, her peer, basically. Somebody who this is the whole gaslighting thing where she relates to her on a level. Esther knows sign language and she learns it really well, but she probably knew it the entire time, just like with playing the piano. And she gets Max to trust her and to like her. And then all of a sudden, Max is helping her hide a dead body.
Crazy.
It's absolutely insane. So then we get to the scene where we're actually at the adoption house or the adoption place. I don't know what you call that, kind of a school, I guess. But they're having their meet and greets with potential parents and all the little kids running around in their what are basically Catholic school uniforms. I mean, there's nuns there, so I assume Catholic. And Esther is completely off on her own, singing and painting. What are your thoughts to Esther when you first meet her?
I had seen it before, so I was like, "Oh, you little shit!" Like I knew what she was gonna do. I mean, she plays the role of the adorable little girl so well right there. And I mean, you just, even if I hadn't seen it before, I feel like you just know that there's something up with this kid. Like, it seemed awfully manipulative that you see her at the window and then all of a sudden, or you think that it's her that you see at the window, and then all of a sudden she's like upstairs doing that or wherever she was doing it at.
Now, if you were adopting, would you have chosen a kid like Esther?
I don't know. I mean, is it like, do you go in with certain criteria that you want this child to meet, or do you go in and you say, okay, who do I have a connection with? You know, like I have a connection with this kid or that kid. I mean, that sounds kind of like picking a dog, though. I don't know. I guess it would. I'd probably go based off of how I felt meeting the child. So I don't know, she would have probably blinded me pretty well. She seemed like a good little catch, you know?
She's a master manipulator. She probably could identify or change her personality to fit anyone who would have walked through that door. But I don't know. Like you say, you're talking about it like adopting a dog. And the first thing that pops in my mind is that why don't they introduce Esther to her biological children first before going through with this? Like, why not bring the kids with you? Because she's going to have to get along with those siblings. They should have not a say in who their sibling is, I guess, but you should be able to see who gels with who better. And right away, they bring her to their house, and the son just does not like her. And part of it is that he wants attention from his dad. He already has a strained relationship with his mom, but he wants attention from his dad. And when the dad is not giving him attention, Esther leans into that by giving him that big hug and staring right at Daniel's the son, to be like, ha ha ha, I've got your daddy. It's weird, so weird. But that's what you do when you adopt dogs, is you don't just take a dog from the shelter. If you already have a dog, you take your dog to the shelter and you introduce them to see if they're going to get along. Because especially with dogs, they got sharp teeth. You don't know who's going to be fighting who. I don't know. I feel like, is that something that a normal adoption agency would do? Like if you have kids who are at least old enough, like Daniel's old enough, Max is young enough that maybe you don't need to do it. She is still pliable. She can still go with the flow. Daniel is an established kid with a personality and goals and friends and everything. And Esther would be too if she wasn't, in the adoption house. All the other kids seem to have friends, but she doesn't. I think that would be a red flag for me. I'd want somebody who I mean, I don't know. I wasn't popular, but I could make friends. I always had a little group of friends. I feel like if you're that isolated, there's something there that's not quite like if you're painting, you can paint with other people, you know? I don't know. But I would have at least have had Daniel meet his new sister first.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it in that terms. I agree totally. I think it's kind of mean not to give your children the opportunity to interact first. You know, and like you said, just be certain that there's nothing, no more red flags.
And then we can talk about, well, okay, so first of all, I like the fact that they incorporate sign language into this movie. Just a couple of random notes I have at this point because you see Esther get the book, the American Sign Language book from her new mom, Kate. And I was wondering what kind of sign language they were using too. I have a friend who, from high school, who actually studied sign language in college. It was like his minor, and I think he just got another postgraduate certificate in it. And I know there's a couple different types of sign language. One that's more about the objects and spelling out the objects, and one that's more, I think, conversational. I'm not 100% sure what the difference is, but it was an American Sign Language book, so I know it's ASL, that means. Yeah, ASL. It looks legitimate. I wish I had my friend here watching it with me and he could be like, yeah, that's right. He'd probably sign along and it would be ASL dorkiness, but I love that about him. But I like the realness in that. I know there's also realness in her journal entries because you see her writing in one of her journals and she talks about Kate writing in her journal. And I paused the video so I could read what was on the page. It's a little blurry, but you can make out most of it. And she talks about having cramps and how she's always checking to see if she got her period, but the cramps are where her uterus would be. So she didn't just have a stillborn baby, she had to have her entire uterus removed, which that's got to be traumatizing enough as it is. And because of this trauma she went through, there's like no sex in her marriage for at least up until that point. And there are times throughout the movie you get to see them try to have sex, and then Esther gets in the way because she's in love with daddy because she's got major daddy issues. But yeah, but there's at least there's the realism there where you've got the conflict with the couple that makes it easy for Esther to manipulate the relationship to begin with. And then our problems begin where the husband just doesn't trust the wife at all. He already didn't trust her as it was, but now he's all hitting on Joyce at the playground in front of Esther. And he's just not trusting the things that his wife is saying over this new person that's in their life that he automatically trusts. And I don't know. I don't understand how you give a stranger that much trust and not this person who's been working on themselves to fix themselves. Also, Esther seems incredibly religious. I don't know if that was fake or not. She's got the Bible, and we know why she has the Bible the way she does, because she's hiding photos. Apparently, she's been doing this to more than one family. We know about a family in Estonia she did it to, and we know about a family in America she did it to. But she had like 4 or 5 different photos of guys in that Bible that she was hiding. However, she is praying at the table before dinner, supper time. She's dressing very conservatively, except for when she's hitting on daddy. But other than that, she's got the sweaters and the tights and she's covered up from head to toe. Do you think it's an act?
I think it's an act. I mean, I think, what do you?
I don't know. Like, okay, she's crazy. We know that. We know she comes from a mental institution, but I feel like sometimes overly religious types and that kind of mania sometimes go together. Like, God wanted you to have this. God did this to you so that you could have all this. Like, we know she has her own hormonal imbalance. And maybe she thinks she's owed these dads because of that, but in some way it ties back to God. Like she could have had, I guess maybe nobody would question a Bible, so it does make a good cover story too. If she had a journal and she had all those photos in it, people would be more like, I want to read what's in here, but it's a Bible, so who's going to want to read that unless you run into another religious zealot or something. But I don't know. I feel like there's a bit of truth to that. Like people say every lie has a bit of truth to it. So That's another red. That would have, okay, that for me would have been a red flag. Like if I were looking at a kid and she was overly religious, even though she's in a Catholic school and she's somehow the most religious one out of all the kids running around,
Mm-hmm.
I would question that a little bit. I'd be a little scared of that.
Yeah.
See, I went to Catholic school too, so I was surrounded with the kids in the jumpers and the Bibles and the singing of all the songs and stuff. Did you go to a school like that or public school?
Public.
Did you ever have like a super religious kid in the public school?
Yeah, we had quite a few. I still couldn't imagine the difference it is in being public school and Catholic school.
I will tell you, it was easier to get changed every morning because it's like you got the uniform. Your variation was wear a sweater, don't wear a sweater. That was
Yeah.
basically it. Like, what shoes do I want to wear? I've got two. I could wear the black shoes, I could wear the brown shoes. And when you were in like grade school, it was saddle shoes. So there were no choices. Oh man, those saddle shoes were uncomfortable too. I do not miss it at all. Except for the times when we got to get out of class because we had like monthly worship on Fridays. So, forced church. For those of you who don't know me and are watching this, I no longer go to church. So there's that. But there was forced church on Fridays. And the music was better than the music we'd actually sing when I'd go to church. I will say that. I'm not a huge country music fan, but Garth Brooks had some really good Christian songs that were part of our mass. And we did a good play version, or we did a good, the theater department put on a good play or musical version. It's I say musical version, there's only one version of Godspell. That was really good. So I don't know if being in a Catholic school makes that more legitimate or not, but it was good. So there were those benefits, but I feel like there's some skewedness when you're in a environment like that. But in a way, maybe it was easier because you take away the types of choices that would cause more fights, I guess, the uniform thing. And I don't know, there were still cliques. It sucks. Guys, if you're in high school right now and you're listening to this, it's going to suck until you're done with it. So just go through it. It gets better, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it all sucks. Public school, Catholic school, private school, sucks. Welcome to growing up. Okay, so I got off on that tangent. We do know that the mom is also trying to write a song. They don't really touch on this. We know that she's a pianist. We know that she was teaching at Yale before she got fired from her job because of her drinking. And I don't know if her getting fired from Yale is attached to what happened to Max in the pond, but I think it was another clarity moment, as her bitch of a mother-in-law calls it, that made her lose her job at Yale. But we know she used to work there and that she's thinking about teaching lessons at home and that she is a really great pianist. She does this whole warm up and I thought it was an entire song, but it was just scales. And I'm looking at her, just crazy fingers on the keyboard. And I'm like, oh God, I've got a keyboard right over here and I barely ever touch it. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should start practicing. But we know that she's got these passions and she's trying to write her song, and the kids, you have kids and they sometimes pause your dreams for a little while. So we know she's going through that stress on top of everything. Oh, okay. Here's a question I have that was not answered by this movie. For what we know about Esther, how did she end up at this orphanage? Because we know that there was an arson attack at the family that she was at before, or there was a fire that burned down the family. We know there was arson in Estonia, but we don't technically know that it was arson in the American family's house. But we know that it was a fire and that it killed everybody in the house. And she ended up at the orphanage. Now, what we find out at the end of this movie is that Esther is an adult pretending to be a kid, and that she used to be in a straitjacket and she's got these scars on her neck and her wrist that get revealed at the end. So why would she go back to the orphanage? Just to, did she need to be there in order to get into somebody else's family? Or could she have just manipulated her way into somebody else's family without the orphanage? Or did they see that this child was the only one alive and they forced her to go to the orphanage? So what do you think about that?
Well, I think she definitely could have used her way to manipulate another family without the use of the orphanage. But I don't know why I don't know why. I feel like for some reason she had a thing being there, like, and getting selected by the daddy. Like, I think it was like some kind of kink for her. I don't know.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that there was like a kink side to it for her, being picked, being chosen, being daddy's little girl. Oh God, so creepy. I live with my dad, guys. I do
Oh,
not have these issues, and I think it's weird when people do. To each their own, and trauma sometimes causes the daddy issues. So I understand that it happens, but I would never call anybody that I'm sleeping with daddy. It's just too weird. Too weird. Oh, like, how is Esther catching Kate and John having sex this entire time? Are they that loud? Their house is huge. It's gorgeous and I love it. But it seems like every time they're about to do it, she like smells it like a bloodhound. There's sex in the air. But it's just so weird. Like, I don't know if she's got it down to a science where she knows that if she pushes this button or she pushes that button, she knows that the parents are going to try something and she can slip in there and make it weird. I love the first time she does it because she doesn't just do it herself. She brings Max with her. And she's like, she gets Max to sleep next to mommy. She's like, I want to sleep next to daddy. And so she's cuddling with the father. I'm like, that is brilliant. But she blames it on the lightning, on the storm that happened. So like, what were you gonna do if there wasn't any lightning? I saw a shadow. Max saw the same shadow. We thought there was a monster under our bed. We were in 2 separate rooms.
Yeah. Yeah. That's strange.
It's just like psychic, man. Like, she's psychic.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the bully and what happens to the bully at the school. First of all, Esther is getting bullied for the clothes she was wearing, and hence my thing about Catholic school versus public school, where at least you don't have to worry about clothing differences. I didn't think what Esther was wearing was that bad. It was a cute dress. I don't think she was in like 5th grade, I think, when she was going to school. I'm not sure that's a 5th grade dress. That's something you wear when you're in like 3rd grade or younger, maybe kindergarten. It was just made for somebody her size. But the bully girl, I think her name was Brenda, was saying something about little Bo Peep, and Esther was just like Ryan from The Office, just checking off a name of somebody she's gonna get. And we see this continue where Brenda tries to take the ribbons off of her neck, and so Esther just starts screeching in the hallway and freaking out at Brenda. And then we get the playground scene. Of course, John the dad is not doing his job as the dad. Esther goes off. Brenda gets pushed. I've never to me, playgrounds are fun, but I guess a lot of accidents happen on playgrounds. Have you ever had like any, like, you have kids, so I assume you've been to playgrounds before. Have you ever seen like playground accidents happen?
Yeah. Like, I fell off the monkey bars one year because we were skipping. We were seeing how many bars we could skip and like be able to grab the next one. And then, like, my kids have had little accidents, but like, it's like nothing huge. Not like that kind of accident. Like,
not the kind where somebody's pushed you and completely broken your ankle.
Yes, that was too much.
Yeah, I definitely winced when I saw that. I'm like, oh, that's gotta hurt. It's so brilliantly done too. It's not like you see a broken bone. You don't see like a bone sticking out or anything. You just see her leg slam in a weird, funky angle, and you see her go down. And it's just enough to make it like when you're watching sports on TV and you see a guy playing football and he hits his knee in a weird angle. You're like, oh, that dude's injured. He's gonna need like time off and therapy and stuff. Like, it was just like that. It wasn't anything super special. It was just the right angle of filming, and it just made me just cringe. Okay, and that is the last we hear from that bully. Like, I assume she's gonna be fine. She'll be back at school, but her ankle is broken and she's got to get, repairs and stuff. But that definitely takes care of her ever being bullied again. So, problem solved for Esther. the big scene, and I wonder if this is a problem that people have with this movie, is with CCH Pounder's role as the nun, the poor unfortunate nun, who comes to visit, and basically she's like, Esther, trouble seems to follow her. We never catch her doing something, but two people would fight and Esther would be there. Or there would be a person who fell on their scissors and got scissors through the jaw, and Esther would just be around, but you'd never see her stab a person. And the nun, Sister Abigail is her name, goes to go back to the oh my god, what is it? The adoption place, and do some more research on Esther to see, what happened to her before. Where was she before this place? And Esther throws Max in front of the car, basically, on the bridge, gets the nun to crash her car, and ends up hammering her in the face. Now, I thought this scene was perfect horror. It's gruesome, it's gory, it's realistic, and it's got a good shock to it. But I think with this scene, there has been a history in horror where there's a Black supporting actress or actor, and they're used for this shock value. They're killed off, and they're only there to support the white cast. And I think maybe that's one of the things people have an issue with this movie. I love CCH Pounder. I'm happy to see her in things. I loved her in Demon Knight. It's probably my favorite role of hers. And seeing her in this movie, I didn't want to see her killed, of course, but I thought she was brilliant in this movie. She makes a good nun. But this scene definitely stuck with me. This was like the turning point where Esther went from just, kind of minor criminal offenses. She hurt a bully. Who didn't want to at least punch a bully in their life? To actual murder. What do you think about this scene?
It was a pretty big jump, and then I just thought it was so messed up that she knew to include Max in it so that she could manipulate her into being like, oh, but you'll go to jail. And then she tells the brother Daniel, oh, but she's just as guilty as I am. And I just can't believe she pushed Max like right out like that. Like how'd she know that she was going to stop? She didn't know the nun was going to stop. That was just crazy.
And she almost didn't too. The nun was looking for something in her passenger seat, like right as she was being pushed in front of the car, and Sister Abigail just looked in time. You could see the camera angle. They do the from behind the car tire or a side of the car tire camera work, and you see her just swerve out of the way in time not to hit Max. And that was terrifying. I was really hoping they were not going to be killing off this cute little kid. And luckily they didn't, but they did kill a nun, so it's not necessarily better either. But what I'm shocked about is that there's a river right there. They went over a bridge, and Esther left her body in the woods and the car. I know she's a tiny person, but she was able to drag Sister Abigail's body as far as she was with Max's help. Why not dump the body in the river? Why not push the car, put it on neutral and push it into the river? I feel like that's where the insanity comes in. She's just not smart enough to know better to get rid of the evidence. And then she hangs on to the hammer. I get it. You burned it eventually, but why even risk having it on you? Like, put some rocks in the backpack, bury it in the river.
That's a good idea.
But you're also right about the manipulation part about Max being brought into this, because she was able to not just, use Max as an accomplice, and also get her to be silent while also getting the manpower that she needed to do what she did. But then she also does this great little manipulative trick where she goes, I had to kill her because she was going to tell on me and I would have to go away. Are you going to tell on me? It's like, oh my God, she just threatened this kid. It was just a brilliantly delivered line, and it scared the bejesus out of me. Perfectly delivered. So we got the manipulation of Max. Full on. Daniel's not buying it. Daniel knows that there's something wrong with Esther. Granted, he was being a little dick kid at the beginning too, because he just didn't want to share his attention. You have more than 2 kids, you got 2 parents, you're outnumbering the parents with the kids, and it's hard to distribute the attention. So I kind of get that. He was the older kid, the younger kid, the youngest gets the most attention, and Esther's the oldest daughter, but daughters are treated differently than sons. So just the way the world currently works. But he's onto Esther. He actually has that meeting, that secret meeting after their mom, Kate, talks to them in the car and is like, is Esther doing anything? Trying to figure out what's going on. And none of them will confess. Oh, because that's right. Because Esther took an X-Acto knife thing to Daniel's penis, and then he peed himself in bed. That was an interesting scene. That was upsetting. But also very smart of Esther. But man, imagine, like, I've seen adults in that kind of situation in movies. I've never seen a kid in it until this movie. And it's rough, man. Rough to watch. But then after that meeting with the mom in the car, because Esther stayed home to paint with Daddy, so creepy. The kids end up getting together and talking about, like, what's going on. Did Esther do something to you? Did Esther do something around you? And Max pulls out these drawings that she made of basically the death of the nun.
Mm-hmm.
They were right next to her bed and under her bed. Like, you would notice something like that in your kids' rooms, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like,
So
at it.
yeah. So there's so many failings on some of the characters in this movie. I talk about the grandma being a complete bitch and the husband John not believing Kate when she's saying there are things going on. And then you got Daniel being a snarky kid to begin with, so you can't trust that he's got everyone's best interest at heart. But then, like, Kate herself, despite working on herself, isn't paying attention enough to her biological children. She should have, like, she's spying on Esther's room and looking for her Bible, but she's not paying attention to Max. These drawings would have been super easy to find.
Oh yeah.
Then there's a scene. One, I love their greenhouse. That's another thing I love about this house. They have that beautiful greenhouse and the flowers that were made from the soil, which had Jessica's ashes in it. And there's this beautiful scene where she's taking Esther to the roses and explaining, what they're for. And Esther, while painting with Daddy, gets the idea to do something nice for Mommy and gives her a bouquet of roses that she cut from the rose bush that was growing from the ashes of their stillborn daughter, which of course Kate rightfully freaks out about. Esther's got this devious smile, like she knows exactly what she did. And Kate barely touches Esther. She just kind of like tosses her away to grab the flowers. And then Esther, in the middle of the night, breaks her own arm. What did you think about this scene with the bite?
That was disgusting. It was like, oh, you wretched little brat. Like, who does that? Oh my gosh. Like, just sitting there watching her, like, crank on it and stuff. I don't know. She needed some punishment.
Yeah, I was waiting for her to get out a whip and just start whipping herself on the back. Just self-flagellation.
Yeah.
But that was a great special effects moment, too. The seeing of the bone popping out but not going through the skin, her popping it back into place, the bruising on it, her whole acting when she was tightening it just like took my breath away. Like, I held my breath waiting for the snap. And it was outrageous enough, but so realistic. Like, if somebody were to do that your bone would actually break in that way. And perfect manipulation to get the cast on and for the dad to not trust the mom even more because the mom almost killed one of their kids when she was drinking. Oh, and she just happened to have gone out to the liquor store that night and bought 2 bottles of wine, which she didn't even drink, but she stupidly hung on to the 1 bottle she didn't open. I would have gotten rid of both bottles. I don't know if Esther knew about the wine bottles. I know that she was reading the mom's journal and figured out where she would hide alcohol in the house when she had it. But I don't know how she knew that the mom had brought alcohol into the house. She must have been spying on her when she was pouring the glass or something, but you don't really get to see that. But then it's like, how? She was staying in bed with Daddy and made the wife sleep on the couch. So there's no way that she could have gotten away from John long enough to see mommy with the bottles. So, you know, that's one little unanswered question there.
Yeah.
Oh, I completely forgot another important scene where we discover that there's a gun in the house and that the parents, Kate and John, do not hide their keys to the gun safe very well. Literally just like a chain of keys, a keychain in the office, just sitting right across from the safe. And she tries to play Russian roulette with Max. That I feel like that would be a parent's worst nightmare.
Oh yeah. I would lose my shit if I saw that happen.
Yeah, and you're living in Texas. You're like in the land of guns. So, but yeah, that it also felt not just true to Esther's character, but it felt realistic. Like two kids find a gun in the house. Are they going to do something that stupid? I wish I should have went back and watched the scene over again because I wanted to know where the bullet was in that revolver because you should be able to see like was that the bullet that was next or was it in one of the other chambers? But how close she would have come to killing Max right there is just it's heartbreaking because of all the times Max could have died. You wish she would have gone to her mom at any moment. She was alone enough with the mom. In the car, they were alone enough where the mom could have known about everything and called the police and gotten Esther. But she's a little kid and she doesn't know that she can trust her mom and tell her that Esther's not going to be able to do anything about it. That they could get the gun from the safe before Esther gets to it and she would be okay. It's just it's heart-wrenching at the same time as also very true to the characters that are in this movie. I feel like this movie would be a hard one for parents to watch, but like for non-parental horror audiences, I think this would be easier to stomach. Like, do you watch the Halloween movies, right? The sequels.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the movies with Jamie in them, like young Jamie?
I loved them. I thought it made it, gave it that, creepy kiddo thing, and it was just, I don't know, it was just really well done because you see her doing her thing, and it's all because her uncle's Michael or whatever. Now I don't want my kids to see it though. I don't want them to watch it and get ideas.
Is it hard for you when you get to the scenes with Jamie in it and she's like running and she's screaming and she's like on the roof and being lowered down? I remember watching that movie in a computer lab with some of my, back when I was in college and some of my peers, my students, not my students, the students I was in class with. And one of them was a professor's wife and she had kids and when I left the room, changed the channel on me because she didn't want to. It was near Halloween, so I wanted there to be a horror movie on, and she changed it to some other happy-hearted thing. But she's like, I can't watch something with kids, in peril and whatever. So I always wonder when I see something with like a kid being in trouble, not like a creepy kid causing trouble, like Michael Myers as a kid or Children of the Corn, but where the kids are actually in trouble, like this movie. Like, if I were a parent, would I react differently? Would I not be able to watch this as often as I do? We get to the treehouse burning scene where we've got Daniel and he's going to be burned up in this treehouse, but instead he tries to fight for his safety and he ends up falling from the treehouse and getting knocked into a coma. Greatly done scene with Esther being the one locking him in there and also lighting everything, including the evidence, the photos that or the drawings that Max drew of the nun being killed, the blood-stained hammer and clothes and backpack that have the nun's DNA on it. All of it gets burned up, and Daniel is in a coma. Oh, and then Esther almost tries to kill Daniel with a brick.
Oh, that was the hardest scene for me to watch.
Really? With the brick?
With the burning, and then like, how do you stop that? Just that whole scene was.
Yeah, it's terrifying because you don't know. You see him climb to the top of the treehouse and fire is coming through it, so he's just gonna crash back into the treehouse that's on fire. But I mean, in the end, luckily he makes it, but he's touch and go for the rest of this movie, basically. And Yeah, he falls to the ground. Esther's got this huge rock. Max is the one who knocks her out. So we're finally at a breaking point for Esther where she has to kill Daniel before he wakes up, or else everyone's going to know. And Max has turned on her because Max stopped her. So she knows she can no longer trust Max to do whatever she wants. We get to the hospital scene where the dumbass grandma lets Esther go get a drink, and she basically suffocates Daniel, who luckily they were able to revive. But she comes back to grandma at the same time that Kate is also coming back to the grandma and is like, where's Esther? Sees Esther with the drink and grabs Esther, who's still wearing that dumbass cast, and is like, you did this, you did this. Max can't say anything because she's deaf, and the husband John just thinks she's gone nuts. So they have the hospital orderlies drugging her up.
She slaps her right there in the face.
Thank you. I forgot about the slap.
I was just could have just avoided that. It might would have gone down better.
I don't know. I think if I were in her position, I would have slapped her too.
I mean, definitely. But looking at it from the outside, like if you would just not done that, he might could have believed you.
Yeah.
But can't stop your reactions when they're happening.
The only solution in her mind. And yeah, you're right. Like from the outside looking in, definitely not the right thing. People are gonna they're all gonna assume you're the bad guy and not the person who's actually the bad guy. There are probably cameras all throughout that hospital. I bet that they could have, like, if she had just taken her rational brain, although her son had just died or almost died. So I get it that she couldn't think rationally, but she could have been like, check the cameras. Where did Esther actually go? Like, how long did it take her to get a soda? There's probably a camera right by the sodas because that's a public area. And I don't know. But I forgot that. I love that slap though. When she did that, I was like, yeah, do it again. But then they restrained her. So
yeah, I was like, dude, no one's gonna believe you now. Like, no way.
But then the husband John takes Max and Esther back home, and the mom is drugged up at the hospital, and the mom Kate gets a phone call from the Sarnon, I think was the I think it was the Sarnon Institute, which was printed on the back of the Bible. It had a stamp on it, so that's where the Bible came from. And she thought it was an adoption agency, and she thinks that this is an adoption agency in Russia. But then it turns out it's in Estonia, and it's a mental institution, and that this woman calls herself Esther. Her real name is like Leanne or Leah, and she was a patient there with a hormonal disability where she is basically an eternal child. She's Kirsten Dunst in Interview with a Vampire. She's never going to grow old, but she'll get older. She'll just never look it. And it's like they took the TV show Webster, or what was the other one with Gary Coleman? And they just took that and they turned it into a horror movie. Like, what if these TV shows were a horror movie? And that's when you get the reveal. She takes off the ribbons on her wrists and her neck and reveals the scars that she got because she was in a straitjacket, and she would fight it so much that the jacket dug into her skin. And that's when, she actually already failed to hit on Daddy when they were at the house. And she freaks out. She starts destroying her room, tearing off the ribbons, taking off the makeup, taking out her fake teeth because her teeth were all crap too. And all hell breaks loose, basically. So the mom, luckily they didn't have the mom in restraints, and she makes her way back to the house. But before we get to the final showdown, what did you think about this reveal when you first watched it?
It was just like, what the fuck's going on? And then seeing the type of drawing she did with her new dad, I was just like, oh my gosh. It was shocking, but kind of funny, but not supposed to be.
Yeah, I completely forget. Like, I remember the drawings of the stuff being burned. Like when the black light colors kick in, you see the institute. She drew her Estonian institute, which that when you see the mom finding it online, after the initial call. And you see her lighting that on fire and people being hung and burned and disemboweled and split in half and stuff in her drawings. But I completely forgot that he tears those down and there are drawings of her naked with him naked and doing it. Is just what, like, how did you not know that there was drawings underneath those drawings? And how often is this fish light, black light, not on? It's there in the room. Do you, like, the parents never turn it on for fun? Like, I switch things off and on just to make sure they still work every once in a while. I don't know. Maybe it's because it's such a big house that they don't do it.
Yeah, I guess so. It's just, it is stunning that they just go unnoticed with that all along.
But a very disturbing scene. And it leads to poor John, who I know he was not listening to Kate. And in a way, this is partially his own fault. For moral of the story, trust your wives. But he ends up stabbed in the back and then stabbed a lot in the front. I forgot. I remember the stabbing in the back, and then I completely forgot that she just goes in on him with that knife. All crazy and creepy. But yeah, so John's gone. He's just a pile of blood on the floor. And it's awful because you really want him to survive so that the wife can be like, ha, told you. But she doesn't get to have that moment, unfortunately. And then we have the final showdown between Esther and Kate, with Max caught in the middle and having her duck down in the greenhouse. One of my favorite scenes when Kate falls on Esther in the greenhouse because Esther's got the gun and she's shooting up at the glass and she's trying to shoot poor Max who's running away but can't hear a thing, so she doesn't know where she's avoiding. And Kate is just like, get away from my daughter, just slams down into the glass and falls on top of her. I feel like that should have broke Esther's back.
Yeah.
But apparently it doesn't. They leave. Okay, another moral of the story: make sure the villain is dead before you walk away from the body. That's my tip to you guys. I always say this when I'm tweeting with my Twitter group and we're watching horror movies. We always have that rule: like, if you are stabbing the villain of your horror story, you keep stabbing. You don't stop the stabbing. You don't stab the one time because you think you're gonna get away. No, you make sure that villain is gonna stay down. That's the way to do it. So that's our running joke. It's called horror school. We have a horror class and stuff. But and if you ever join us on Twitter, we tweet every Thursday nights, double features. Yeah. So she falls on Esther. She takes the gun, which was really smart. I'll give her credit for that. But then she walks away with Max and they head out to the pond. Last showdown, the two of them scuffling on the pond, Esther and Kate, with Max who has the gun, and she shoots it and they fall through the ice. And then probably my favorite moment, where you've got Kate coming out of the water, the icy cold water, and you think Esther is gonna be dead in the water, but she's coming up behind her, grabs her ankle, and she goes, "Mommy, help me, help me." And Kate goes, "I'm not your fucking mommy." And just kicks her, nails her in the head, and you see her neck break and she falls down into the water dead. What did you think when you saw that?
I was pleasantly surprised. I was just like, yeah, I mean, I'd be the same way. Like, I'm not your mommy. Like, do something to keep her down there. What did you think? I mean, you loved it, obviously. Just
it was perfect. I felt really good for Kate, for her character, because everything she went through, not just the stuff that Esther put her through, but everything she did to get to where she was before Esther was there. Esther had torn it down in the few days or months that she was a part of their family. And I felt like Kate putting the boot in the face of Esther was like her taking her life back and being that mama lion protecting her cubs. And while I feel really bad that John couldn't make it with her, I felt really good for her. And I thought that was the way to end the movie. Because, they could have done the whole, her eyes open in the water and she's going to be back thing. I'm glad they didn't do that. She's dead. Yeah. She's dead. She's in the water.
Same.
Now that brings me to my news that I found out yesterday. Because when I'm doing these preparations for the podcast, I like to go to IMDb and try to see, what kind of little tidbits I might not have known about this movie exist. And I found out that back in November of 2020, the actress that plays Esther, Isabel Furman, I hope I'm saying her name right, she actually posted that they were working on a prequel movie to Orphan, which I thought it was hilarious because I don't think Orphan had that great of a reception. I think it was profitable, but people talk about it and they don't always talk about it in the best of light when I hear people talk about it. But it's one of my favorite Dark Castle movies. But then again, I like Ghost Ship, which is also a Dark Castle movie, and people also hate Ghost Ship after that first opening scene. Screw those people. I love Ghost Ship. But they are making a prequel. We don't have a release date yet, but I think they've already wrapped up filming because I was going through her Instagram account and I saw some of the makeup done on her face and stuff. And I think one of the posts was that she just did her last day of filming. Now, there could be scenes without her they still need to film, but I think they're at the post-production process now. So we just need a release date. And Dark Castle is involved in this. I went to a Wikipedia page, so I don't know how accurate that is. But Dark Castle is still involved. They have this and another movie called Seance on their list of movies that are to be determined for a release date. But this movie wasn't on that list last time I looked at it, which was earlier last year, because I just wanted to know what happened to Dark Castle. I was watching a Ghost Ship and House on Haunted Hill and 13 Ghosts just for the hell of it. And it came to my mind and I didn't, know of any Dark Castle movies that were coming out in the last 5 years. I remember I love their opening. Their logo is that really creepy castle and they focus on the gargoyle that like opens its mouth and then they pull out. I always thought that was so good. It's like when you see a Blumhouse movie, it's a focus on that room where you got the spinning chair in the air, you got the girl in the corner walking around. Very creepy. Or Twisted Pictures. They've got the nail and the barbed wire spinning around it. I love that. Or Lionsgate even has their gates, and if it's a horror movie, it's the red, and if it's a non-horror movie, it's usually white. So I loved Dark Castle's opening. I really thought it fit with the horror genre, and I was sad that they hadn't had anything out in a while to catch up on. I think there's like one movie, The Hills Run Red, that I've never seen. And I think I'm going to go find that and watch that movie because there's a preview for it actually on this DVD. So I think I'm going to go find that movie and watch that. Which, by the way, I will be going live on Instagram because there are a ton of previews on this DVD and I want to show them to people. So look out for that. And they're before the menu too, so I don't even have to go to the menu and go to previews. It's just like a VHS tape. It's right before, and you can either skip them or watch them. But yeah, so apparently this prequel for Orphan it's called Orphan First Kill, and it's going to start off with her escaping from the Estonia mental facility, and it's going to be because she supposedly did arson in a family home in Estonia before escaping to America. So I don't know if we're going to get to see that Estonian family too, or if she's going to just escape from the mental institution and find her way to America. Then when she's in America, she takes the place of a daughter who's been missing from a rich and wealthy family. And that's the family that's supposed to burn up and die before she gets to the adoption clinic in the first Orphan. So we're going to see all of that happen. And I guess Julia Stiles is going to play the mom in the rich and wealthy family. So yeah, I'm excited to see this.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts about a prequel?
I think it's exciting, especially that Julia Stiles is going to be the mom because she's the mom of Damien in the Omen remake.
I completely forgot about that. That's right. Yeah.
It'll be good to see her back doing something, horror themed.
And it's funny too because Isabel Furman is like 11 years older than she was when she made the first Orphan. So it's easier to make her look like a kid and then pretend that she was really an adult. I read that for this movie, because she actually is an adult now, she's like 23 years old, that they're going to use not just a lot of makeup, but forced perspective, I guess, to make her look shorter, to make her look like a kid in this movie.
So I wonder how.
I'm excited to see a trailer come out for this because
Mhm.
I'm absolutely ready for it. I do know that it's not the same director that directed the original Orphan. It's the director who directed The Boy and Brahms the Boy too. And
Mhm.
also he directed the Scream TV series, which I've never watched. Have you watched that?
Yeah, I watched both sets. I liked both of them.
Okay.
TV
Wait,
version, VH1 version.
okay. Yeah, I've never seen the television series. I know that Scream and Scream Queens came out at like the same time. Maybe Scream
Mhm.
came out first, but I want to watch them. I just haven't yet, so I don't know how great they are. But let's see. And then well, checking my notes here. Okay, I am slightly wrong. It's only being directed by the guy who directed The Boy and Brahms the Boy, too. It's being written by the guy who wrote for the Scream TV series and who wrote for Haunting in Connecticut 2, Ghosts of Georgia, which I always thought that was the stupidest title. Just call it Haunting in Georgia and just, make it tied to Haunting in Connecticut. But I actually really like that sequel. I like the original better, which I think Virginia Madsen was in that. And I think was that another Kyle Gallner movie?
Um, I wish I knew where mine
Wait, hold on. I got it.
was. Not.
On my DVD, Haunting in Connecticut. And yes, Kyle Gallner is the guy who, the kid who has cancer in it. And the only reason that he's in my mind is because I just saw, oh God, what was the movie? Oh, The Cleansing Hour. I just watched this. I think it's on Shudder. And an adult Kyle Gallner is in it. And I didn't realize, like, I'm used to seeing him as this really skinny kid. He was in Veronica Mars as Beaver, and he was in the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street, which was awful, but I liked him. He was like the one actor I liked in that movie. And yeah, he is the guy in The Haunting in Connecticut 1 as well. And so I love the movie. I think he's a great actor. And if you ever get a chance to watch The Cleansing Hour, if you haven't, have you seen The Cleansing Hour?
No.
So good. I watched it as one of my Twitter double features, and it's about this guy who's faking being a priest online. He's trying to build all of his followers. He's doing fake exorcisms, and Kyle Gallner plays his brother, who's I think it's his brother, either his brother or his best friend, who's helping him behind the scenes doing the production and special effects and stuff. And then Kyle Gallner's uh, girlfriend, she gets possessed by an actual demon, and how he has to deal with trying to exorcise this demon while on camera live. So it was a very clever concept, great special effects, kind of pretty gory, and has a good shock ending to it too. So I highly recommend it. I just thought I'd bring that up. But that brings us to the end of our talk for this movie. Um, Last thoughts about this movie. Would you
Um,
recommend?
I would recommend. I think it's a fun movie. It makes you think. Uh, I don't see what there is to lose watching it. Except for your time. I mean, I like it.
That's a great point. Like even the bad movies, all you're losing is your time watching it. Like I watched Plan 9 from Outer Space a few months ago, and it was probably one of a very few movies that I will never watch again because it was just that bad. But I'm glad that I got to watch it because now I can say, "Hey, I watched that. I now have a legitimate opinion on this movie." Don't watch it, but you should watch it. Um, but yeah, I don't feel that way about this movie though. Love Orphan. Oddly enough, this is not one from my collection though. This is one from my mom's collection, but since I lived with her till she passed away, her collection is my collection. But yeah, I remember seeing this in theaters. I remember the previews. Always recommend this movie. Even though I know that it's not for everybody, this is a movie I would definitely rewatch. So, what do you have on your schedule for this week?
I have Jonathan C. Reddock and Elizabeth Suggs tomorrow. They're authors. Wednesday, I have Damon from the Slasher app. Thursday, I believe it's Steve Merlot from from the Sawyer Massacre that I was telling you about.
Right.
I said that's Thursday, and then Friday is Jason J. Elliott of oh my gosh, I'm losing my brain power. The Tale of a Scorpio Stinger. Am I saying it right? Anyway.
I've heard you mention that one before. Aren't they coming out with a sequel for it?
Uh-huh. Yeah, he's doing a second one for it. I don't know when, but I did see where he had posted more information about it, so that's cool.
Cool.
What do you have?
Well, okay, so I am so close to getting Cat Coven out. As of Monday when we're filming this, I did not get ahead of schedule like I wanted to at all. But all of my horror games are out. So if you are looking to kill some time, that's about like half an hour of time right there. If you go one after another, go to my YouTube channel. I'll have links for all of our stuff in the description. But yeah, there's that. Terror Tuesdays is tomorrow. And I'm sorry, tomorrow, as of when we're filming, it will be Tuesday, obviously, before this show comes out. And we are watching Pumpkinhead. I know we had this when I was a kid, taped on VHS off of cable, but I can't remember if I ever actually watched this entire movie. So I'm going at this movie with fresh eyes. I'm very excited because I know it's a great creature feature. It's got Stan Winston's special effects on it. I think it might be a movie that's directed by Stan Winston too, but I'm not sure if that's true or not. I know Lance Hendrickson is in it from the Alien movies and the show Millennium, which I don't know if people remember that, but it was on like around the time of X-Files. And I absolutely love him, so I'm excited to see this.
Yeah, he's a sweetie.
Yeah. But that is about it for me. So stay tuned, everybody. All right. Well, you have a great week.
All right, you too, Mary.
Talk to you later.
All right, bye.
Bye.